Hello, welcome to Science with Jane. As you can see, that's the treehouse, but I'm not in the treehouse today. I'm gonna try something new and record from out of the treehouse in my yard because I don't know if you can see in the background on the fence, I have my 2 bird feeders in the background. So this episode, maybe you could guess, is all about birds. And we will see if any birds come to the feeders while I'm recording. I'm not so sure because I'm here, but maybe you can hear some birds in the background. I'll be quiet for a moment and we can listen. So I hear a lot of them, and we'll see if they're brave enough to come to the feeders while I'm sitting not all that far away. So first of all, I love birds. They're so much fun to watch. And basically, where all of us live, there are at least some birds, because birds have this ability, many of them, we'll get to that in a moment, to fly, which means more than other kinds of animals, they can go from one place to another relatively easily. So even in cities, you can get birds that fly from park to park or tree to tree. And I think that's a really cool thing about birds. The other thing about birds is they're just sort of amazing. I am going to get poetical and read you the beginning of a poem that was written by Emily Dickinson, who is a poet who lived in the 1800s in Massachusetts. And some of you may have heard this before, and I think it's a perfect description of why, for many of us, birds are so special, because they feel like hope. And I think hope is an important thing to feel right now. So here it goes. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. So I hope this episode on birds brings you some hope and sort of a reminder of just sort of how amazing things are, like birds, for example. So the other reason why I like birds is there are so many resources out there about birds and so many easy ways to become a bird scientist and actually share the data that you collect at home or on a walk or in a park with actual scientists who are collecting data about birds all over the world. So I'm going to just show you some of those resources. Okay, so again, on the link at the bottom of this video, that's where you can find this. There's a great Brains On podcast called Bird Bonanza, which is all questions asked to scientists about birds, which is really interesting. I've also put a link to a video called Harlem Murals Dedicated to Climate-Threatened Birds. And this is about a super cool mural project in New York City about birds and also about birding in cities. So if you live in a city especially, you might want to check that out. There's also a ton of live bird cams out there, which are so cool. There's a lot of them. I think this link is good. It's on the Cornell University All About Bird website. And it seems to be, all those links seem to be active. There's a lot of links out there if you just search for bird cams that for whatever reason, maybe they're not running the camera that season, or the camera isn't running yet because it only runs in the summer. So you should check that out. Then there's all these different ways that you can report your data about birds to scientists. There's eBird, which we'll talk a little bit more about later, which is an app which I use. There's also Merlin Bird ID, which is connected to eBird, and this is a super easy way to identify a bird that you don't know. So in the past, people relied on things like bird guidebooks, and this lists like tons and tons of birds, and you could look up your bird and learn about it. And eBird has sort of put that into an app where it's pretty easy to figure out at least options for the bird that you might be seeing. Okay, so again, that's the Merlin Bird ID app. And then, last but not least, there's this website which I've mentioned before called Journey North, and they are interested in reporting data, well, both collecting and reporting back to you data about all kinds of things, including birds such as robins, orioles, loons, and bald eagles. So if you live in a place where you see those kinds of birds, you might want to check this out and report your data there. Okay, and then our activity is going to be all ages, including grown-ups, because, you know, birds, they're just for everyone. So we are now going to first play a game. It is called What's a Bird? So you can pause the video in a moment if you want and make 2 signs. One sign should say all birds. The other sign can say only birds. Or you can pause the video and print this out. And then as we go through this, you can make check marks under either the all birds column and or the only birds column for these features, or you can just listen to the video and then fill this out later if you want to. Okay, so we are going to start with our first feature or ability. And our first feature or ability is flying, the ability to fly. So we need to decide, do all birds fly and or do only birds fly? So I'll give everyone a moment to think about that. Which sign will you hold up for flying? Okay, I'm gonna hold up 0 signs. First of all, not all birds fly, so I can't hold up that one. I'll put it down. Because, for example, can anyone think of a bird that does not fly? Yep, penguins, ostriches, kiwis. So there are some birds that do not fly, so that is not something for all birds. Now we have the other sign, only birds. That means that birds would be the only kind of animal that has that ability. Can some animals besides birds fly? That's right, we got like bats, we got insects. So there are things besides birds that can fly. So for this first one, flying, you wouldn't put anything, you wouldn't check off either all birds or only birds, because other things can fly and not all birds fly. All right, let's move on to beaks. So first of all, do all birds have beaks and do only birds have beaks? Okay, here's my answer. Ready? All birds. So all birds do have beaks. They can look very different. Sometimes we call them bills, but they're basically all this structure that they get like their food into, okay, and no teeth. So all birds. But I can't put up the only bird sign because there are some other kinds of animals that have a similar structure to a beak. Specifically, like turtles have a very similar structure, mouth structure, that is also called a beak. So I guess it sort of depends on how you define your beaks, but I would pick all birds for that. Okay. Now our next feature on our chart here is feathers. Okay, so everyone think about that. What signs will you hold up or where will you check? Ready? Okay, so all birds have feathers. That is super awesome because if it has feathers, then it is hope and it is also a bird. Now, this is a little controversial, but I'm going to go for it. I'm going to hold up the only birds sign. Now, I do sort of have to clarify for all those dinosaur lovers out there that technically this is only true of living animals. So of all the animals that are living right now on our Earth, only birds have feathers. But it is certainly also true that dinosaurs had feathers, but they are extinct. Some dinosaurs had feathers. So there's this whole dinosaur-bird connection, and really you could say that our birds are living dinosaurs, and this whole episode is actually about dinosaurs. So that is definitely something you can check out more information about because it is super cool, but we're gonna focus on living things. So we're gonna say that only birds have feathers because we're talking about living animals. Awesome. Okay. Next, we have 2 wings. Okay, so let's think about that. So in the 2-wing department, I'm going to hold up the all bird sign. Okay, because all birds have 2 wings. But I can't hold up the only bird sign because there are some things that also have 2 wings that are not birds. For example, bats have wings, right? Some kinds of insects have 2 wings. Some have more than 2, so that gets a little complicated. So for 2 wings, we get to hold up the all bird sign, and that's it. Okay, last but not least, laying eggs. So this is again one that we hold up all birds for. All birds lay eggs. That's how their babies are produced, okay? But we can't hold up only birds because there are some other animals that also lay eggs. Can you think of any? So there's some strange mammals that lay eggs, like the platypus, and some fish lay eggs. And then also reptiles, often reptiles lay eggs as well. So reptiles would be like snakes or turtles. So there's all kinds of different animals and amphibians that also lay eggs, but it is true that all birds lay eggs. And the truth is bird eggs have some differences from these other animals that lay eggs as well. So that's another detail. Oh, I think we have a bird in the background. I'm gonna turn around so I can see what it is. It is a house sparrow. They are very common where I live. Okay. We're going to keep going. Maybe that house sparrow will induce other birds to come to the feeders too, even though I'm sitting here talking. All right, so the rest of our worksheet, now that we know what makes a bird, And just to review, basically the only thing that all birds have, that only birds have on our list, are feathers. Okay, so all these other things, either some birds don't do it, or it's something that other animals besides birds do as well. So if you have a feather on an animal and it's not an extinct dinosaur, it's a bird. Okay, now we're going to do the second part of this. This is a data collection sheet for birds. I don't want to block the birds here because they're getting more comfortable. I think that was a red-bellied woodpecker, the big one that sat on the fence and then flew away. They're super cool. And their head is red, even though they're called red-bellied. It's very confusing. So this is a basic data collection form for collecting data about birds. There's a spot to write down. I'm going to fold this so I don't block so much. The kind of bird that you see. And if you don't know the name of the bird, you can describe it and look it up later, or you can use like the Merlin Bird ID site to try to figure that out. Okay, here's this, so it says describe or sketch if you don't know the name. And then here it says number of this type of bird. So you would just do tally marks for how many birds you see. And you can also record observations of bird behavior. All right, it's important if you're going to share this data or collect it over a lot of time, that you record the date, and you also record the time you spent observing, because any kind of data collection, scientists need to know that information, and you also need your location. Hopefully everyone is at home or in a nearby park, so the location you should also write down, but it shouldn't change very much. Okay, so to do this, you can go outside like me, or when I observe, I usually do it from a window in my house so I don't scare the birds as much. Or you can take a walk and look for birds while you take a walk. Or if you're in a place that you don't think you're going to see any birds, but you really want to see some birds, there's this great webcam at the Cornell University bird feeders, and it is a live webcam, and they have all these bird feeders set up, and a ton of birds come to this webcam. So you could totally do this data collection while looking at this webcam if you're in a spot where you can't see a lot of birds. Okay? Here are some things to talk about. What kinds of birds did you see? What were they doing? Let me put this down here. How were the birds different? And how were they the same? So you can think back to our list here about all these characteristics about birds that you could see what was similar and what was different about them. You could also think about the different colors in the different birds. All right, now the second page of this, again, all ages, is options for more things. And there's two options here. One is to draw either a bird you see or your favorite bird. Like maybe you live where there's not penguins, but penguins are your favorite bird. You could draw a penguin. That would be awesome. Okay. The second thing is if you're interested in collecting data about birds and sharing it with scientists, there's information about how to do this. I recommend, as I mentioned before, the eBird app, which you would need a parent to allow you to set up, or the Journey North website. If you're going to submit data on Journey North, you also need to register. So again, you would need to use a parent email address, okay, if you are a kid. If you're a grown-up, you can use your own. And one final note, because I think this is super important, and remember, when collecting data for scientists, 0 means a lot. So if you go out and collect data and you see 0 birds, scientists want to know that. Because what that means is the scientists would then know that at that place, at that time, on that date, no birds were seen. And sometimes knowing where the birds are not is just as important as knowing where the birds are. So I totally get wanting to see birds, and seeing birds is very exciting, but actually scientists need the boring data when you only see like 1 bird or maybe no birds at all. All right, well, that's the episode for today about birds. I am switching from daily episodes, which I know I missed yesterday because I was a little bit busy, to weekly, because on Monday I am going to be doing remote learning with my own students because we will be back in remote learning school after our March break. So I hope everyone has fun. There's a lot of episodes where you could do things over time. So if you want to go back, you could do the tree one some more, signs of spring one some more, the bird one, you could bird every day if you really wanted to. And I hope everyone stays safe and as much as possible, stay at home. Bye, everyone.